Hey guys, today is laundry day, but I want to tell you about this interview I'm just about going to do with a young man named Alex. Alex was down in Vietnam and now he's here in Dumaguete, and we're going to talk to him about the differences between Vietnam, Philippines, and also we're going to talk about old geezers in Thailand. Hey guys, I'm here with Alex. Now before we get started with Alex, I want to tell you I've been watching his blogs online, and this guy is really interesting, and he just came back from Vietnam to Dumaguete. So, Alex, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for having me today, Mike. I'm really excited to connect with you and your audience today. I think we have a lot of great topics to discuss, and I'm excited.
Well, I want to touch onto you're a younger blogger. You're a younger, what we would call a slow traveler. And you spent some time in Vietnam, 30 days or so?
That's right.
How did you find it there?
You know,
your true feelings.
My true feelings. Well, I have to be honest. So I intended to stay for 90 days, and ultimately I cut the trip short. There were some challenges that I experienced that had me wanting to continue in my journey. I want to preface this by saying I had a wonderful host. I had some really great connections with some local folks, but there were just certain experiences that I had that made me feel like I was ready to hit the road again.
Well, let's break it down. How did you find it cost-wise, living in Vietnam?
Absolutely. Well, cost-wise, I would say it's a no-brainer. It's one of the cheapest countries in the world, one of the lowest cost of living countries in the world. If you are bringing US dollars like we are, it's comparable. You're bringing Canadian dollars. It's very affordable.
What did you find as an expat community or foreigners there? Did you find a large group of Americans, Russians? What nationality?
I'll be honest, I didn't really connect with any kind of community. Now, I will mention I spent the whole trip in Da Nang, so I didn't make it up to Hanoi or to Ho Chi Minh City, which are more likely, just based on population numbers, to have a large community. I did notice a community of Russian or Ukrainian people there. I also noticed some Americans, but people were more scattered and seemed to stick to themselves a lot more.
Did you find the relationships between the foreigners and the local women? Did you notice older guys, retired expats like me, dating younger Vietnamese women?
You know, I just didn't notice that much. I feel that in Vietnam, that age gap relationships are probably just not as, I don't know if the right word is accepted, but they're just not as common.
How about the education of the people there and the language? Did you notice like the people seem much more educated than one would think?
Yeah, I would give the people there a lot of credit. People seem to be pretty savvy. You know, people had an understanding of, the fact that a lot of foreigners are interested in their country. It's a rapidly growing economy, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. There seemed to be a lot of understanding of internet culture and just what foreigners are looking for, right? Because a lot of us are drawn to Southeast Asia for similar reasons, whether it be cost of living, whether it be the nice weather, whether it be the fresh fruits and vegetables, really the opportunity to own our own time.
Would you recommend Vietnam as a place for an old expat to retire?
I think it's best to do what I would call a stack ranking, right? I would say it's a little bit lower down the list for me because I think what an older expat is going to struggle with is, one, the language barrier. Naturally, if you're in a country like the Philippines, you're going to have an easy time communicating with people. There's just a base level of English where you're not going to feel so isolated, because it's one thing to be able to talk to a random foreigner on the street. It's another thing to know, hey, I can go up and talk to almost anybody just walking around. I can have a conversation, get to know people. I would say also that an older expat that's looking for a relationship, they may feel like, you know what, I can't really pursue a relationship here as easily. So I would put it further down the list. And then another thing to tack on there is that there's no retirement visa. So if you're a guy and you're thinking, I want to follow the program, I want to do everything by the book. I'm going to go for a retirement visa. Well, that's possible here in the Philippines. You have what's called an SRRV visa in Thailand. You also have a retirement visa. As far as I know, in Vietnam, they're currently doing what they call a border run, and every 3 months they're getting another tourist visa. Well, that's not a retirement visa, right? That's something that's more of, I think, what I would call you're in limbo, right? You're in limbo. You're hoping they grant you another tourist visa. It's not this system like they have here where you're thinking, okay, I know I've got another year. I've got X amount of time where I'm guaranteed to be able to stay within the rules. So, I'd rank it a bit lower on the list just because the visa, the relationships, and then also the language barrier.
How much do you think it cost you per day during your 30 days in Vietnam?
I would say to be comfortable, I would range anywhere from, I would say $35 a day.
US.
I would say $35 US per day. My rent was about $215 for a studio apartment. My electric and water bill together was about $80. I would say I spent probably $12 a day on food. Throw in a couple dollars a day for coffee. I didn't rent a motorbike because I'm just not a rider. But yeah, I would say that $35 a day, because then you could tack on maybe some trips up to some other areas. Maybe you want to go out and have some drinks with some new friends. That gives you a bit of a buffer.
So in Vietnam, for you guys that have that $1,000 a month budget, maybe a little bit less, and you're just looking at the cost of living, Vietnam is a great choice.
Absolutely. I'd say it's the most budget-friendly place out of the places that I've been in Southeast Asia.
Where else have you been?
So far, I've been to Thailand. I've spent a year in Thailand.
Well, let's talk about Thailand, a year there. So, same sort of comparison. Is Thailand that much better? Everybody tells me, oh, Thailand's the best place to go. Is it that much better than Vietnam or the Philippines, because you've been here before?
I would call Thailand easy mode. I don't think it gets much easier than Thailand. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, there's been decades of tourism in Thailand. They figured out a long time ago that people they love the culture, they love the nature, they love the variety that you have there. You can be in a big city, hustle and bustle of Bangkok. A couple hours later, you can be sitting on the beach having a coconut, having a fresh coconut drink. In Thailand, everything is just so cut and dry. If you want transportation, you can easily get transportation. If you want a condo, you can walk down the street and have 5 different condos to choose from. If you want to have a nice meal, whether you want to have Thai food, which is famous around the world, or you want to have some Western food, very easy to do. It's a no-brainer there as far as I'm concerned, because when I was in Thailand, I encountered not just short-term tourists, right? Younger guys who are there to check it out for a month, but also retirees, guys who they're on a retirement visa, they're planning to stay there for a very long time, and everything in between. Guys who came for a year, that was where I was at. And so I see Thailand as being just very, very easy. It doesn't get it much easier than Thailand.
They have the visa run also in Thailand that you have to do.
So that's something that I did. Now I did something that's called an education visa. This is not a permanent solution. This is not something you're going to study Thai for 20 years. But basically with the education visa I did, you study Thai. So you apply through an official school. I went through one that's actually affiliated with the Ministry of Education there, and they grant you 11 months, and that's extendable, right? So it starts off with 3 months, and it's extendable up to 11 months. So I got 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, and then 2 months. And that gave me a great opportunity to start to study the language. They want you to make a commitment there. Hey, you're gonna stay for a year? Well, you ought to try to get some basic understanding of the language. It's not English, right? So in Thailand, the English level is improving over time. I think every time I go to Thailand, and I've been every couple years for the last 6 years, there's more and more English, but you're meeting them halfway. When you start to understand basic Thai, when you start to understand hey, this is how I order in a restaurant. This is how I can communicate a bit with the staff at my condo building. This is how I talk to a tuk-tuk driver. That really elevates your experience. That really allows you a different level of access and a different level of enjoyment. And it really, the Thai people love it. Even if your pronunciation isn't great, even if you're still very, very basic, they really brighten up when they see you're making an effort.
You're making an effort on the language. Well, let's, educate. That's a great thing for the nomads, digital nomads. Want to go somewhere, and probably a hassle-free visa once you get in there, and they're interested in learning the language. But what about us old geezers that go in there? That everybody says, that's the place to retire. More girls than you can shake a stick at. The medical is so cheap. Everybody's got a boob job. What do you see that?
Yes, I have seen retirees throughout the country. Now, I think naturally you're going to see more in what I would call the middle cost areas. So I would describe Bangkok as potentially expensive. I would describe some of the islands as potentially very expensive. But places like Chiang Mai, my favorite city, Pattaya also, these are the types of Hua Hin. These are the types of places that are more mid-range in cost, and I think you'll see tons of retirees. I first became familiar with the idea through seeing some guys that are actually, more in the middle age range that are retiring there. But in my time there, I would see tons of different guys. Some guys married to local ladies, some guys who are committed bachelors, that they felt like, hey, you know what? This is the place for me. I have a predictably modest cost of living. I'm not going to have to commit to a big mortgage payment like I would back home in the West. I'm not going to have to commit to a big truck payment like I would back home in the West. And they're able to have this beautiful life in this tropical country where they are welcomed, right? They have this visa in place that they're able to commit for an extended period of time. They know they're not going to get, oh, your rent is double overnight, right? That's something that happens in the West. Maybe not double, but it's just a very
constant increases.
Yeah. 10, 20% year over year. That's not going to happen. There's so many condos in Thailand throughout the country. There's so much variety. It's really, I think it comes down to variety. If you're an older gentleman, you're a retiree, you want a single family home, you've got that. You want a modest sized condo where you can walk down to breakfast, you can walk down to your Western style coffee shop. I saw those everywhere I went in Thailand, and they always came with a group of retired guys, or you'd see 2, 3, 4, and increasingly as well, retired ladies. There are some ladies that they feel like, hey, you know what? Dating might not be what we're there for, but we like the modest cost of living. We like that we're able to have the tropical weather. We're not going to be having to find somebody to shovel our driveway out. We like that the culture is very, very considerate of older people, different from the West, where my personal opinion, a lot of retired people just don't get the respect that they deserve.
They're waiting for us to die. They're waiting for us to die in the West. So what did you think your daily cost or monthly cost in Thailand was comparative to the Philippines and Vietnam?
Yeah, so I would put Thailand more at I would say around $40 a day, comparable to Vietnam. I think a little bit less than the Philippines, dollar for dollar. If I want the equivalent experience in Thailand that I have here in the Philippines, I'm going to pay a bit more for my rent. I would say probably 25% more, maybe 30% more, depending. I'm the guy that goes for condos, so I like more of a modest sized footprint. It's what I'm used to living in the West. It doesn't require me to spend a lot of time on upkeep and cleaning and that kind of thing. So I would say Thailand and Vietnam are comparable, with the Philippines being a step above.
So the Thailand, so if we say the Vietnam, roughly 1,800 to 1,000, you can be all right there. Thailand would be that 1,000 to 1,300 range, depending on the style of living you want. And remember, guys, whenever we talk numbers, it's an individual thing. It's your style of living, things you want out of life. If you're going to be down at the local bar, hitting up the bar girls every day, you're going to need a little bit extra money. But if you're looking for a peaceful, relaxing lifestyle, which you can find in Thailand, and definitely can find in Vietnam. 1,300 probably do you well there. Now, you've been in the Philippines before. How long have you been in the Philippines total?
Yeah, so total I've spent about 6 weeks here in the Philippines.
So how are you finding the total living experience here? I'm not going to put you down to how much it costs for you to live here. You haven't been here long enough, but the style of living compared to mainland Asia, which would be Vietnam, Thailand, Laos. How do you think the Philippines stands out? Is it a lot of people relate it to Mexico instead of an Asian country? How do you feel?
Absolutely. I think of it more in line. I have spent about 6 months total in Latin America. The Philippines reminds me much more of Latin America. You definitely see some of that Spanish influence here.
The people here in the Philippines, everybody says the Filipino people are welcoming, they're warm, they smile at you. Granted, we don't know what they're saying. Once you leave them, they could be saying, F that guy, but face to face, they're very polite, they're very nice. The language is a big difference. The one positive language-wise that I love about the Philippines, the signage is in English. Now, how did you find the language in Vietnam compared, do they speak English in the restaurants and hotels and such?
Yes, I felt that Vietnam is really good as far as their infrastructure goes, to having some basic English there to assist customers. You also have the Translate app. Sometimes Translate app is good, sometimes it doesn't exactly communicate your meaning in the way that you'd like. But yeah, I think that there's English schools throughout Vietnam, right? And they're teaching all kinds of different Vietnamese people to have some basic English. There's definitely a strong incentive there. They know, hey, the better we get at English, the more people are going to want to come here and spend time. The better we're going to be able to serve our customer base, not just the local people who do make up a substantial portion of their customer base, but also Americans like yourself, people from the UK, people from Australia that also have curiosity about Vietnam.
Now, a lot of buzz going around the YouTube community lately is people are feeling unwelcome in the immigration bureaus of Philippines. Have you found that to be a sense check? Have you done your second visa here yet?
So I haven't yet done that. Actually, my intention is to do that on Monday. I'm going to go in with my passport and to extend it. And I'm definitely happy to report back as to what that experience is like, if I get any kinds of questions. It's going to be still pretty early for me, so I don't know how much of those questions I'll get, but I'm prepared.
When you came in at the airport, was it hassle-free? I mean, did you feel unwanted or unwelcome coming in the airport?
Not at all. My experiences with Philippines immigration, the first time I came 5 years ago, as well as this time, very welcoming. I was asked, hello sir, how long are you staying today? Or how long are you staying this trip? And I explained, well, 30 days. Okay, sir. And, got the stamp, no further questions.
Are you finding from 5 years ago to now, of course, we had the great lockdown and inflation has really gotten out of control. How big a difference do you see the cost from 5 years to today here in the Philippines?
That's a great question, Mike. That seems to be on everybody's mind. Everybody I've talked to has explained, hey, the Philippines has doubled in price. I think that may be a localized situation. I think that if you're talking about expat hotspots, it's definitely gone up. You look at the costs here in Dumaguete. Now, I didn't come here to Dumaguete 5 years ago, but everybody I've talked to that's been living here for 5 years has gotten their rent increases. They've noticed the prices going up at their restaurants of their preference. I compare it to the West, and maybe it's gone up 20% from what I could tell. When I spent time in Cebu last time, I felt like it was pricier than mainland Asia already. I noticed, for example, when I was in a steakhouse 5 years ago in Cebu, the ribeye steak was the equivalent of $25 US, and that was 5 years ago. So maybe today that same steak is $30 or $35, but I would already call it expensive at $25. So for me, when I compare it to cost of living increases back in the West, it's still economical. Is it as cheap as it was 5 years ago? No, it's not, but there's nowhere in the world that's as cheap as it was 5 years ago. So we have to we have to moderate our expectations as expats. We have to understand their input costs are going up, their electricity is more expensive, their rent is more expensive. All of these costs are going up for them. It's still nowhere as near as high in the West where, you know, if your rent here goes from $400 to $550, that's not the same as your rent in the West going from $1,000 to now $1,500, right? So that's something I would say to keep in mind.
Do you find a lot of people anticipate or they believe the cost of living is so cheap in the Philippines and Vietnam and Thailand that when they hear $600 a month rent, it shocks them? How can it be that expensive?
Absolutely. I think that people expect to pay, you know, $75 a month for rent in all these countries. And are there some spots out there that you could pay 75? Yeah, there are. Are you going to live in the way that you see these YouTubers living? Are you going to live in the way that you see the content creators living? No. That's going to be a very modest sized place. That's going to be potentially without air conditioning. That's going to be in a, perhaps you're going to be, you know, several, you know, 5, 10, 15 kilometers away from the restaurants that you like, the shopping malls you like.
You're going to be way out in the province.
You're going to be out in the province. You're not.
And even then, you're not going to find it cheap or comfortable.
No, and that may, you know, that may not even be furnished, right? Are you prepared to commit to furnishing an apartment that maybe 6 months from now you decide, you know what, I don't like this city. It's not for me. It's too much of a small town. It's, you know, it's too provincial for me. So this idea that you're going to live on $400 or $500 a month, I just don't think it accurately reflects the reality, especially long term. Maybe you could tolerate that way of living for a month. You're going to get tired of it pretty quick. For me, the least I would consider is that, you know, $1,000 to $1,300 a month, where my rent is $250, but I'm in a, or $300 in Thailand. It's going to be a bit more here in the Philippines, where I'm living in a modern condo, where I'm within walking distance of the coffee shops that I like to frequent, where I can walk down to the mall and easily upgrade my cell phone service or pick up a nice new shirt, where I'm not hoping, okay, I'm going to punch this into the Translate app, and I hope this cab driver understands. None of that's an issue when you're willing to spend a bit more than the bare minimum, and it's not nearly as expensive as what you'd pay in the West.
It's way cheaper than back at home.
It's so much more economical.
Now you're in Dumaguete. Let's hit some of the myths of Dumaguete. You've been on the boulevard. What do you think of the boulevard?
The boulevard is a wonderful place. You really get this community feeling when you go down there. It's contrary to what some people think. They watch the YouTubers and they think that Dumaguete is 75% foreigners and 25% Filipinos. It's probably the reverse. You're gonna see a lot of different foreigners on the boulevard, especially you look at the kind of the strip of businesses. You see Tom and Tom's Coffee, you see the Why Not. You have a lot of businesses that do cater to foreigners. You're gonna have the Western style food, but you're also gonna experience a lot of Filipino people, and they're gonna smile at you. And they're going to be kind of curious, like even though they do engage with a lot of different foreigners here, they're curious about foreigners. They're curious about what brought you here.
Do you see a lot of guys walking around with cameras? You know, a lot of people say everywhere you go, the blogger's got a camera in your face.
Not as many. I think that the bloggers are more respectful than they get credit for. The vloggers that I've met that have wanted to chat with me, we have a conversation first. They want to get to know me. They want to understand my background. They want to know, why Dumaguete? Why not Cebu? Why not Panglao? Why not Boracay? Why not all of these other places? What made you choose Dumaguete? And I think that it's just, there's a great synergy here between the local people and the foreigners and the expats that want to live here.
Now, you were telling me you met a girl on the boulevard, and she was unavailable.
Yes.
But tell us the story.
Yes. So you know, it's very common here that you'll meet women and you find out, hey, they're unavailable. They're in a committed relationship. Maybe they're engaged, as is the case of a waitress we met recently. She was actually committed to be married eventually. But what they're going to do is you press them a little bit, you ask them a few questions, they're going to try to introduce you to their single friends. So maybe they've got a cousin or a sister or a sister-in-law. They've got different ladies in their life that are single, that are interested to date a foreigner, that are open and curious about you, and they want to get to know you. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing. You know, this is a very romantic country. A lot of the people here, they believe everybody should be in a relationship. And if you're a good guy, if you're a guy who's genuine, who's authentic, who is seeking a committed relationship, then this is a great place for that. Now, I don't think that it's as easy as some other parts of the country. Some other vloggers have talked about, hey, the foreigners are oversaturated in Dumaguete. So I do think that in some ways you are better off meeting a significant other in a different area. But if you are in a committed relationship, if you have met the person that you want to settle down with, bringing him here is a great option. But yeah, I just have to be transparent and say that there's so many foreigners here that you're not going to stick out in the same way that you might in a different part of the country.
They're not staring at you as you're walking down the street as much. Do you find, if you were looking for a girlfriend, say you're traveling like you are all around, but you want a companion to go with you, where would you go look for that girl?
You know, I think the big cities are the best option. I know a lot of guys, maybe they're not from a New York or an LA or a London, and they don't like the idea of settling down in a really big city, a Bangkok or a Manila, or you know, a comparable size city. But I would say give it a try if you are in the dating phase of your expat journey, because it's in some ways a game of numbers, right? If you're in Dumaguete, what's the population here roughly?
About 140.
About 140,000. Well, you got to think, so half of those are ladies, 70,000, and then maybe a third are underage, and then maybe a third are outside of your age range. So now you're narrowed it down to 25,000. Well, maybe half of those are in committed relationships. So you really start to shrink down the number of available women. Well, you look at Cebu or you look at Manila, there's millions of people there. And so you do that same math, you're left with a much larger pool. And those places also have ladies coming from around the country who are looking for work, who have moved for a job. Maybe they're working in a call center. Maybe they're working as a graphic designer. Maybe they're working in marketing. And so you've got much more opportunity. You're not just looking at the local pool of people, but you're looking at this sort of melting pot from people around the country. The last time I was in Cebu, I dated a woman who was not from Cebu. And so you'll have a much better experience there. And I think you ought to commit to even 3 to 6 months, and then maybe you meet the right person and you say, hey, you know what? I'm not as much of a big city guy. Why don't we move to a smaller city? Now, of course, you're gonna have to be prepared to help her out. She's probably sending money back home to her family. She's not just there in Cebu or Manila to pad her own pocket, but she's there trying to help her family out. So you gotta be cognizant of that. You don't wanna just pull her away from her job and not be able to replicate that support. But you know, once you're able to do that financially, then you might look at a Dumaguete, you might look at a Panglao, you might look at a Boracay if that's within your means.
So Alex, you got a YouTube channel, and why don't you go ahead and do that selfless promotion. What's the name of your channel and what's it about?
Absolutely. So my channel is called Eastern Dreamer, and my channel really focuses a lot on the topics of financial independence. I think a lot of young guys, they see retired guys who are living the dream, who went from the stressful 9 to 5, the grind, to relaxing. They've got a beautiful wife. They've got a nice place to live. They spend their time, in ways that they want to. They own their own time. They control their own time. But the younger guys, they haven't put in the time, right? They just haven't had the time in their career yet. They haven't had the time to build up a Social Security check. They're not qualified yet for Social Security. So I'm trying to talk about that, the financial independence aspect, and also the psychology, how to think about the psychology of being an expat. In some ways, it can be isolating if you're not prepared to make the transition from your home country where you've got friends, you've got family, to you're an explorer now. You're an adventurer. You're going to a place you've never been before. Maybe you have a few casual acquaintances that you've met online, but how to make that transition, how to go from your old life to your new life, because there's so much more to it than just, oh, I've got the plane ticket and now my life's transformed overnight. It's a learning process. There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to adjust to. And so I would say those are the two big focuses of my channel, the financial independence aspect, but then also the psychology of living abroad. So yeah, check me out on YouTube, Eastern Dreamer, and it's been such a pleasure to chat with your audience today,
Guys,
Mike.
We found him on YouTube. I reached out to Alex. It isn't like a young vlogger reached out to me to get some recognition. And I'm impressed with his channel. And check him out, give him a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and watch the videos and make a comment. If you're going over there for my channel, tell him, hey, Mike sent me. Thanks, Alex, for your time. And until next time, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone.